Okay, so now we're going to move on to shoulder movement and how we get good movement in our shoulder, and we're going to look at actually 7 muscles here. But for the rotator cuff, we're just going to learn them as a group. So latissimus dorsi, deltoid, pectoralis major, the pecs, and the rotator cuff. So let's go back to the big picture we had here and start with our latissimus dorsi. This enormous muscle in the back is our latissimus dorsi. It attaches from the mid of our ribs on the spine, on the vertebrae there, all the way down to our pelvis. But it's a very thin muscle, so it's a very broad, thin muscle at the back. So latissimus means broad and dorsi means at the back. So it's the broad muscle of the back. But where does it attach? This big back muscle is actually attaching on our humerus here. And it runs from the back actually to the front, to the anterior humerus, and attaches here. So what does that do? What's that muscle going to do? Well, because it's coming from the back, it is going to extend our shoulder, taking the hand behind us. It's going to, because it runs medial to the joint, it is going to medially rotate our shoulder. So we're going to extend it, we're going to medially rotate it, and also because it runs medial to the joint, it's going to adduct. So it's going to be responsible for doing this movement to the shoulder. Many people think it's a back muscle, it's doing something in the back, but actually the latissimus dorsi is all about moving the arm, moving the arm at the shoulder. So that's latissimus dorsi. The next one is our deltoid. So maybe I should just circle the latissimus. Oh, not what I wanted to do there. Circle our latissimus dorsi. This big muscle here. Now we're going to move on to the deltoid. And that's this muscle that goes over the shoulder that maybe you think of as the shoulder muscle. And we see it in the posterior view, but we also see it in the anterior view here, because it literally is triangular shaped. And it's triangular over the whole shoulder. So imagine the big base of the triangle here going to a point just on the lateral surface of the humerus. So what can that do? Well, there are anterior fibers that can flex the shoulder forward. There are posterior fibers that can extend the shoulder backwards. And we've got fibers that are going lateral to the joint, so we can abduct it. So the deltoid is a bizarre muscle because it does lots of shoulder movement, seemingly contradictory. But if you have fibers at the front, they can pull forward. If you have fibers at the back, they can pull backwards. And if you have fibers going just to the side, they can pull up. So we get extension, flexion, and abduction. That's the deltoid. The next one we said, oh gosh, going the wrong way, still screaming help. Probably we all are. Okay, pectoralis major. That's the muscle here, which you know, that big muscle that goes over the front of the chest. But again, it's moving the arms. As any bodybuilder knows, it's going to help you flex at the shoulder. It's going to move the arm. It's not moving the chest, it's moving the arm. So it flexes the arm. It is also going to medially rotate it, and because it's coming from medial to lateral, it can also adduct. So it's doing some of the same movement as the latissimus dorsi, and they can work together for adduction and for medial rotation. But they work against each other in terms of the pectoralis major flexes and the latissimus dorsi extends. So sometimes muscles work together and sometimes they don't. The last set of muscles I don't actually have a picture for. That's called the rotator cuff. But many of you may have heard people who've had rotator cuff injuries. These are 4 very small muscles that come from the scapula and literally at the back, and literally wrap themselves around the shoulder joint and attach to the humerus, very close to the joint. And they're holding the head of the humerus on to the scapula, so you don't dislocate your shoulder, so you keep your shoulder joint stable. There's nothing stable about the bones there. It's just a big ball of the head of the humerus fitting on a tiny little socket of our scapula. So, and that's because we want so much movement in our shoulders. But to keep the arm, the humerus, onto the body, we have lots of muscles around there, and the little ones that are protecting the joint are called the rotator cuff muscles, and there are 4 of them there, and I don't expect you need to know the names of them. If you damage the rotator cuff, things like brushing your hair becomes very difficult because you don't get that movement, you don't have that control. You're having to use your much bigger muscles to do that work, and it doesn't work. Okay, so that's shoulder movement. Thanks.